William Samuel.
We come into the world where we are before we come into the world. Is a place I'm not prepared to talk about. I can't say a word about it, so I won't try. Then there is a very wonderful occasion that takes place between mother and father, and linear time begins for us. Linear time. 3 dimensions and time. Then we spend 9 months coveted by our mothers. And this is Mother's Day. And I don't look like your mother. I can't get over all of you coming here when it's Mother's Day. Then we make an emergence all by ourselves, we think. We think. But we're aided and abetted. And there are angels attending. And then we have a few happy years. There are the years of the child. It isn't long until we begin to grow disillusioned. And Mama isn't like she seemed to be. And Daddy isn't like he seemed to be. We find out that Christmas isn't real. Uncle George tells us that. Then we find out there are an awful lot of things we can't do. Can't go this way, you can't go that way. Don't pick that up, don't touch that. And the glory and joy of childhood begins to go away. Please don't hang on all these words real heavy, because you know it isn't in the words. You didn't come into this world talking words. And some of you won't go out talking them either. Ask me, I can tell you all about that. It isn't in the words at all. It isn't in the intellectual message at all. We think it is. It isn't in our going to church. It isn't in our belonging to a metaphysical group. It isn't in our much study. It's between the lines. It's under the lines. It's instead of the lines. So all of you remember that it's not going to be in these words. It's in between them. I would like to use a word that I couldn't say 2 days ago, but it's called entrainment. Entrainment. Years ago, most of you would have come here on a train. Even from California, Oregon. Entrainment. It means that everybody is on board. Entrainment is one of those simple words that our great physicists don't know what it means or how it works. Bruce, if you were to start a big pendulum swinging in the back of the room, and Rachel, you started one here, and somebody started one over on the other side of the room, it wouldn't be long until all of those pendulums are swinging together. We don't know why that is. Entrainment. Well, nothing takes place at these talks until entrainment began, until we all relax a little and sit easy and let the entrainment begin. Once upon a time, there was a man whose name was Wing. Li Wei Wing. He played the flute. He gave long concerts. He didn't give a concert very often because those concerts lasted 7 days. 7 days and 7 nights. Very long. But when Wing gave his concert, the birds stopped to listen. And the wind stopped blowing so it could listen. And even the rocks listened. People came from miles around to hear Wing give his concert. Well, on Wing's last concert, he forgot where he was on the 7th day. He made a mistake, and he flubbed up a little bit, and he played the last lines 2 or 3 times. He just forgot. But then he concluded his concert, and the birds started flying again. The wind started blowing again. And the grass that hurt him started swaying again. And all the people that had come to the concert got up and started home. And what do you suppose they talked about? What did the people talk about? They talked about his mistake. So you people, please forgive my mistakes. Somewhere I wrote a long time ago in a book, we do not have to determine what is to be seen or how it's to be seen, because awareness has no responsibility in the matter and doesn't have to go anywhere to see certain sights or hear certain sounds or feel certain feelings. Isness is completely self-sustaining, effortlessly caring for this awareness we are. Now, this much is certain. The awareness listening to these words will never stop, will never die, but will continue holding the glories of infinite being forever, plumbing the depths from God to joy to joy, from laughter to laughter, from flower to flower, from little boy to little boy and little girl to little girl, from evening star to morning star. There is no death of identity, no end of the awareness that God is being. That awareness is this awareness. And that's how I would like to start. There is one thing that no one in this whole world will quarrel about. We quarrel about everything else, whether the Bosnians are doing what they're supposed to do or the Serbians are doing as they should, or whether we have dressed properly or not, whether we should have come or not. But there is one thing about which we are absolutely certain. And I call that to everyone's attention to begin with, because this is a beginning. The one thing that we don't fuss about is that awareness is aware. Awareness is aware. What is awareness? Well, at the moment, you look forward and you look at a creature up here at a table, pretty table, with real flowers on it. And you say his name is Bill. But I want you to be more basic than that. You began with awareness, didn't you? You were waking this morning and you looked around and you said, oh, what am I doing in Georgia? Or, why am I here? You began with awareness. The very first thing that was aware was awareness. We began with awareness. One time the apostles went to Jesus and they said, tell us how our end will be. And he looked at them and he said, you're talking about your ending, so I assume you have found your beginning. I'm paraphrasing liberally. That's about all I can do now. And blessed is a man who has found his beginning and stays there. So we really, all of us, start with awareness. This awareness is aware right here, right now. And we never leave it. We never leave it. We never go away from it. Awareness itself is who and what we are. There are those who began to wonder, well, what's life all about? Why am I here? Well, what's awareness all about? Awareness is always awaring. It's always aware. Even when we have been ill, to the point of being unable to move. Awareness goes right on being aware. And awareness isn't ill. Awareness isn't having a hard time. Awareness might not like what awareness sees and hears, but awareness is going right on, being aware. And being perfectly aware. Three years ago, I had a heart attack. It wasn't my first one. I've had a lot of them, and if you will excuse me, I will tell this story because it will help you maybe. And it was a monster heart attack. And they can come at any minute. And I was given an angioplasty because they said that will help. And I said, well, you're the expert, so have at it. And there was an angioplasty, and it went well. And everything was going fine. And then all of a sudden, it collapsed. And I was all by myself. And then all of them bypasses collapsed, one by one. There were 5 of them, and they all collapsed. And I wasn't supposed to live. Now, during this time, I am hyper-aware. I am aware of everything. I am aware of anything and everything I want to be aware of. I can be aware of my childhood, of my father and my mother. I could be aware of anything. And yet I'm hearing these voices talking about this is bad, this is bad, this is fatal, there's not enough blood vessel left to carry blood around this man's heart, and so forth and so on. But I could hear everything. And I survived. And I survived because somewhere along the line I said, well, okay, this is what it's like, I suppose to die. But awareness belongs to God. And awareness is God's awareness. It doesn't belong to me. It doesn't belong to Billy or Bill. It belongs to God. And so God take care of it. God took care of it. Somehow I survived. And somehow the body created what was necessary for a heart to survive. It was nip and tuck for a while. And there was a wonderful lady that was present. And I remember her coming into the room and tending those chores that nobody else wanted to. And one day she bent down real close to my ear so I could hear her. And I'm going to say it like she said it, because the way she said it couldn't be improved. She said to me, "Does you know what love is? Does you know what love is?" Well, those of you who have read my books, several of them, know that every book contains a chapter about love. And this lady asked me, do I know what love is? And I wanted to hug her neck. And for the first time in my life, I guess, for the first time in my whole life, I was totally, fully, absolutely honest. Because I said to her, I don't know what love is. I haven't the least idea what love is. I wish I knew what love is. But I don't know what love is. And this lady says to me, you doesn't have to know what love is, because God loves you. And I love you. And from that moment, I got better. From From that moment, I made a turnaround. And I lived instead of dying. And as the months went by, I said, there must be a reason for this. There has to be a reason for this. Surely no man has been granted a boon to keep living like this. And somebody knocked at my front door, and it was a visitor, and I said, come in. You're here for a reason. I know you're here for a reason because you knocked at my door. And somehow we both arose to the occasion. And then there was another knock, and then another, and another. And I decided that there had to be a reason. The reason we're living, the reason we're here, what it's all about, it seemed I knew. And it seemed silly not to tell anybody anymore. For many years, I didn't talk about the child because I didn't want people to think I was childish. And I wouldn't talk about the child. And I wouldn't talk about the equation because I was afraid to talk about the equation. I was raised a little Jewish boy, and I was told that there were secrets, and one didn't betray the secrets. One didn't talk about God because one didn't know anything about the ineffable. And I had to, when I thought about back over long life, I remember Buddha wouldn't talk about God either. He said, I don't know anything about God, so I won't talk about God. But you can ask me other questions. And if you remember, the old rabbis of old wouldn't even write the word God. They would leave it blank. And so it was that I thought that I shouldn't talk about the equation, and I shouldn't talk about the child. And of course, I can't talk about God. I was raised a little Jewish boy, but my mother was a Christian Zionist. I couldn't go to temple because they said his mother is a Christian Zionist and doesn't believe in medicine and doesn't go to doctors. And I didn't belong to the Christian community because they said he's a Christian Zionist. And I remember my first time to go to school, my first day at school. I was greeted by a hailstone of rocks. People throwing rocks at me, yelling, "Jew, go home. Jew, go home." So I know what it's like to grow up without a community at all, without a Christian community or a Jewish one. Now, when I was 7 years old, I was attending church. I guess I was 8 years old. When all of a sudden a man had an epileptic seizure and screamed bloody murder. And he fell out of his seat screaming. Now that sort of thing doesn't happen at a Christian Science church. You don't dare do that. Because God is all. Because God is good. And there isn't any life, truth, intelligence, or substance in matter. But the man fell out of the seat anyway, and he screamed anyway, and nobody did anything. Now, I was way over on one side of the church up front because Mom believed in sitting up front. Let the visitors sit in the back. And this man screamed, and I knew that you weren't supposed to interrupt such a holy thing as readers reading from the Bible and the science of health with key to the scriptures. You want me to say it, don't you? By Mary Baker. But he kept screaming, and nobody did anything. And I broke away from my mother, and I ran all the way across the front of the church and down the aisle to where this tall, big, huge man was screaming. And I just knew that he shouldn't be there and that somebody should be helping him. And I started tugging toward the vestibule. I looked up and saw that everybody was knowing the truth. Everybody was pinching their nose and knowing the truth. Well, I started dragging him down the aisle. It was didn't have a beautiful carpet like this. It was this, wood floor. And there were wooden pews. And a little elderly lady stood up and she helped me. So it was she and I dragging the man to the rear of the church. In the vestibule, a doctor who was in attendance, who had never been allowed to join the church because he was a medical doctor, came to the man's rescue and told me, "Billy, you can go outside if you like. You shouldn't be in here now." And I went outside and I sat in the privet hedge and I said to myself, if God is all, if God is everywhere and everything, and if God is good, in which there is nothing worketh or maketh a lie. I was a smart little 8-year-old. Then, why is this man screaming? And why doesn't somebody help him? And I was resolved at 8 years old to find out why life is what life is. and how it's like it is. And so that was how it began. Then I was sent to a military school. I complained about having too many sisters and not enough brothers. And I was sent to a military school in Mississippi. And they used a hazing system. And I can't tell you how many brooms have been broken over my 14-year-old butt. And how many paddles have been whacked against my 14-year-old butt. And coat hangers wrapped around it. But I was still determined to know if God is good, why is all this going on? I made a discovery at that military school, and that was if I pretended to be studying, they wouldn't haze me. So I pretended to study like crazy my whole first year until I wasn't a plebe anymore. I no sooner got out of military school than I went to China, second lieutenant of infantry. I was much too young to be a second lieutenant of infantry. I was only 18 years old. The Army didn't know what to do with it. So I went to the backwoods of China, flew the hump, and there I had as an interpreter a most wonderful man. He was a Taoist master. I didn't know what a master was. Had no idea what a Taoist master was. But everywhere we went, people would recognize this man. And they would bow in front of him. Children would come up to him and laugh. Just laugh. And hold his hand and laugh. And I said to myself, boy, I've got a good interpreter. And I'm going to learn about China, and I'm going to learn what makes this man behave like he does. Now, he was fat, and I wanted him to get in shape like a good second lieutenant wants his soldiers to get in shape. I was going to have to live with Chinese troops out in the field with Chinese troops, not Americans. I had to eat Chinese food. I had to eat with chopsticks. And my only luxury was Mr. Shore, who spoke English beautifully and spoke Chinese well. Now, I found out about Mr. Shore. I found out that just 2 months before he joined me, his wife had been killed by the Japanese. His wife had been raped to death by the Japanese, and his daughter too. Now, Mr. Shore was a Taoist master withdrawn from the organization to preclude that question. He was withdrawn and had married. So I went to his tent one day when he was supposed to be exercising, and he was doing Tai Chi. Have you ever seen Tai Chi? It's the most unexercising exercise that ever was. It is not designed to take fat off your tummy and to put muscles. It's designed to coordinate the eye with ear, with the thoughts, with the sounds, with the sky. And he was doing his Tai Chi when I went in. And I said, Mr. Shore, why are you such a happy man? He said, I'm supposed to be. Why shouldn't I be? Then I told him I knew about his wife and his daughter. And I said, we Americans don't appreciate that. We think that you should be more respectful of your wife and your daughter. And that you should have a long and mournful face. And he said, well, I understand you are a Christian Scientist. Now, how did he know that? This is the backwoods of China. This is Yunnan province, barely over the hump from India. How did he know I was a Christian Scientist? He said, "You don't believe in death, do you?" And I said, "No. I'm told that we don't believe in death. I don't know why." Because people die regularly. especially Christian Scientists. He said to me, continued his Tai Chi. While he continued his Tai Chi, he said to me, "I don't believe in death either. And I'm living that truth." There is a gentleman here in attendance, probably the senior in attendance. I can't read the name, but his name is Joseph Dowler. Joe, are you here? Hi, Joe. God, it's good to see you. Joe, Ruby is here too. Ruby is right here, right now. Ruby is closer than she's ever been. And that's a fact, isn't it? Death is not what it looks like. And neither is life. And neither is this three-dimensional space-time continuum what it appears to be. I said to myself, and Mr. Schur said, "I am living my philosophy. Why don't you?" Then I said, "Boy, have I got a great interpreter." And I'm going to stick real close to him. And I did. During the almost 3 years that followed, Mr. Schur and I were close together. I saved his life. He saved my life. Later on, when he had a chance to not be in combat, he chose to come with me anyway, to be in combat. I want to tell you how the party, I've never told this, have I? I want to tell you, I say it all with Mr. Schur because I wanted to know what he knew. And he taught me a lot. One day when the Japanese were coming up a valley and it appeared we would be captured, I told Mr. Schur to please go ahead because he couldn't hide wearing civilian clothes. But there was no way I could hide. And he wouldn't. He was retching. He was throwing up. He was vomiting. There is no sick than when you're vomiting. We had just climbed a hill. And I was telling him, "Please come on. Oh man, please come on. You've got to go. You've got to get up and go." And he was on his hands and knees and he was retching. And he pointed to the mountains. And I said, "I see the damn mountains. We have to climb it, so come on." He said, "No, look. And he kept pointing. I got down on my hands and knees and I looked up his arm. He was pointing to a little flower that blooms in the snow of the mountains. Sandy, you must know what that flower looks like. Sandy, you and Earl and Tommy live up in the mountains, Colorado. He pointed to the flower. He said, do you see that little blue flower? Just when the sun hits that area, it blooms. And tonight it won't be blooming. And it's exceedingly good fortune. Exceedingly good fortune. I said, we got to go. Somehow we got out of there. On another occasion, we were riding our mules into a little town, and off in the distance we saw what we thought were children running around a tree, catching the leaves. And by this time, I was good at teasing Mr. Shore. Yeah, you crazy people, look at you, out catching leaves. It's the only tree in the country, and you're out there catching the leaves. As we got closer, I noticed it weren't old men. I mean, they weren't children. They were old men. And they were so happy. And they were running under the tree. Every time the wind would blow loose a leaf, they would run to catch it. And it's hard to catch a falling leaf. But it's exceedingly good luck. It's exceedingly good fortune to catch a yellow leaf. Not so long ago, a man from Minnesota came to visit me. He was so serious and so earnest, and he had such a long face. And the leaves were falling on the persimmon tree. And I was walking down the hill. I couldn't stop it. I couldn't keep myself from it. I ran over there. I started catching the leaves, trying to. And do you know what? Old Sourpuss got right up. And he came right out there. And he and I were catching leaves. You've never heard such laughter? Such laughter. When my time in China was over, I went back to study with old Mr. Shore. He greeted me at the train station. He gave me a mantra. And then he said, tell me what this means. The same moon shines on 10,000 rivers. Well, I was like Tom Feltonstein. I knew the answer right away. And I started to give him an answer. After all, I had known him almost 2 years. But this was to say with him. He said, you don't have to answer that question now. You have 3 days. 3 days and 3 nights to answer that question. So I went back to my little place, and I started writing the answers. The same moon shines on 10,000 rivers. And it meant this under certain circumstances. It meant that. Then I would lie down on my blanket, which was on the floor, and I would think of another reason, another answer, and I would get up and write that. It wasn't long until I had several pages filled with answers. The same moon shines on 10,000 rivers. when I went to see Mr. Sure, I must have given him the right answer because he kept me for a suit to study under the Taoist tradition, which is very hard. You only see the master once every 30 days. Only once in 30 days, well, 28 days, a moon. He gave me a discipline to do. That discipline was to walk down and go into this village and to see good in everybody, no matter what they looked like, no matter what they said, did, but to keep looking at them till I could see some good. I still do that. It's the funnest discipline that ever was. All of you, try it. Keep going until you can see something good about that one. Now, sometimes it's negative. It was real easy for me to see a pretty lady and see something good. It's so easy to see an old man. On my last day in China with Mr. Sure, he didn't come the way he was supposed to. He was supposed to come right down and greet me with the Chinese greeting. And I get the Chinese. He didn't come. And he didn't come. And he didn't come. Finally, late in the day, I sent the little Chinese soldier that was there to ask for Mr. Sure to please come. I only got to see him once in 28 days. He was the only one in that part of the world that could speak English. Well, finally he showed up. He was wearing slippers. He looked very angry. He looked at me and he said, "You fool." I didn't know what he meant. I had done everything I was supposed to do. He looked at me and second time he said, "You fool." And then he spun around and he left. And that was the last time I saw Mr. Sure. Never ever saw him again. Some months later, I'm home, and there's a letter for me. And my dad, with great anticipation, said, "There's a letter from China for you." In those days, it was very rare to get letters from so far away. And I recognized the date on the letter. It was the date of the incident. I called that the incident. The day he called me a fool. I opened the letter and I read it. And it said approximately, "Dear Bill, I will this day call your attention to the most difficult thing I've ever done. This day I'm going to tell you all that stands between you and self-fulfillment, between you and peace, between you and joy, between you and victory. All that stands between you and it. The letter went on. This day I'm going to do the most difficult thing I've ever done. I'm going to show you how 2 words, they're just sounds. Word can't hurt you, you know. Just a sound. I'm going to show you how 2 words will step between a friendship of many years. I had to stop and think what the 2 words were. He had called me a fool. You fool. And walked out. Mr. Shore passed on a few months later. But he is aliver now than he ever was. Mr. Shore called me a master. And he said, but when I do, I want you to know what a master is. Never abuse it. Can't teach it, but never abuse it. What a master is one who recognizes God. Who can say, this is it. This is it. This is it. That's all a master is. Before our session is over with, I hope I can call everyone's attention to all that stands between you and joy, between you and the answer to every question, between you and wealth, between you and sufficiency. I hope I can do that in the hours ahead. And I thank you very much. We'll take a break to tinkle. Thank you. Thank you. I am going to talk standing up. I am going to rise to this occasion. If I thought I had to do anything, I would be lost. It isn't me who does anything. And none of us do anything. I promised that this would be a seminar, and it will be, which means that you will participate as much as I do. I didn't know I would talk so slowly. The fact is, I didn't know I could talk at all. A couple of days ago, that was so. Now, I want to talk to you about a present that is here right now. We all started saying that the indisputable fact of being is awareness. We awaken in the morning and look around and say, well, how do I feel today? And here I am at the same old grind. And awareness is aware. How do I feel? That's, of course, awareness giving its report. But I want to tell you that awareness, while it is here functioning, I'm going to try letting go of everything and walk around just a little bit. There is a presence, right now. You can call that presence whatever you like. I used to say God. I like to use that word, God. But I have been made aware during the past 40 years that there are some sections of the country that you go to, you don't talk about God. You don't use a word, and so forth. So if you are comfortable with spirit, or truth, or isness, use any word you like. But I want to refer at the moment to that presence that is here, that we all forget about, a presence. Now, you know what? I don't have any adding machine up here, but if I had adding machines going, and you all had adding machines out there, we would all be aware that there was a presence of arithmetic in the room. And that presence doesn't announce itself, doesn't show itself forth, doesn't say, here I am, doesn't look down on us with castigating eyes. But it's here. That presence is here. Arithmetic is here. Now, you musicians, there are a lot of musicians in this group. There's one lady who sings so beautifully and so well. She's like wings. She makes everybody cry when she sings. There are musicians here, but we know that the principle of music is here, right now. It's fully here. It's totally here. It's not partially here. It's not just a little bit here. It's completely here. Arithmetic and music. Those of you who write know that the alphabet is here too. Writing has been my discipline to find out about the present, about it, about awareness. So the alphabet is here, right now. It isn't flying through the room, calling attention to itself. I'm afraid I'm going to sit down. So I want to tell you that right here, right now, is a presence fully here. I call it God. It's always here. As linear time goes, we're born, become disillusioned, and usually join a religion of one sort or another. At which time there is even greater disillusionment, because religion didn't keep its promise. It didn't give us the hopes that we had hoped for. Always. It didn't. So many of us became disillusioned a second time and went on to say, hey, there's got to be more life than this. We might have sung as the lovely lady does, Is this all there is? And then we discovered metaphysics. Of course, in the East, it works the other way. If you are living in India or China, you discover metaphysics first. If you discover anything at all. And then you study with a teacher, or two or three, and it begins to fail. And you ask again, is that all there is? And then, if you are from the East, you maybe discover religion. Now, if I may, I will draw a big S. There are two S's, thank you, in the river of life. One of them is religion. The other one is metaphysics. Some of us discover both. Some of us discover neither. I would like to make a point early on here that it's not important whether we discover either one of them. It makes no difference. There's a Chinese word called meo guanchi, which means it makes no difference. So, whether you have been very religious in your upbringing or not, or very metaphysical or not, meo guanchi. You're all right now. You are where you are supposed to be right now. And this now is very beautiful and very perfect, and it contains within itself all that's necessary. You will notice when you stop and think about it that now is always all right. I mean, so we're lost. We couldn't find this Lazy K Ranch because of the, roundabout ways to get here, and we're lost, and it doesn't seem that we're okay, but really, if you stop and examine that now is all right. When we are asked the question, where are you, we always answer here. And if someone says, what time is it? We say it's now. In linear time, in a space-time world, such as we are walking around in right now, we always say, I am here, and it is now. And we can't limit it to that here and now, but we try to. I think that in a greater dimension, omnidimensional world, it's easier to say here and now. We have to have it spread out over time, or we couldn't send it. It's so wonderful. That's the truth, isn't it? It has to be spread out over linear time. Now, all time is, and here we get a little bit into quantum mechanics. 10 years or so ago, science began investigating awareness itself. Now, heretofore, science had been investigating trees and rocks and people and things and how far it was from here to there and how far from there to here. And it was concerned with an external world that was out there, a measurable distance away from a me sense who sat here and said, me and my awareness. 10 years ago, science said, let's us investigate awareness itself. Because in some of our calculations, we are finding out that time can go either way. And furthermore, we are finding out that time is relative, not absolute, and that time is measurable. Consequently, it can't be absolute. And so science began an investigation of the things that we have been looking for all our lives. Why are we here? And what is truth? And who am I? And what's it all about anyway? And what am I supposed to do? I want to do what I am supposed to do, if I can. But why do I have all these bills in the meantime? And why do I have these obstreperous children in the meantime? But science, with a very weird arithmetic, found out that we could take the Newtonian world and flip it upside down, and lo and behold, we had a quantum world. And they were both true under certain circumstances. There are objects, and there is time, and there is a place at which we get our mail. We have to eat and defecate and do all the unpleasant things that seem to go along with a linear world. But there are times when we dream, when we don't have to do those things. There are times when we are aware and don't have to report to a human body what we are aware of. So science began to back into what quantum mechanics or what physics has refused to admit. Not quantum mechanics, but physics across the board, generally. Still concerned with an experimenter who is separate and apart from his experiment. But there were those group of physicists, people, one of whom was to be here, but suffered or had the same experience I did and couldn't come. But I listened to that physicist talk to Krishnamurti. Are there those of you here who know who Krishnamurti is? Yes, lots of hands. Well, Krishnamurti was familiar with a subjective world, which is what we become aware of when we move from religion to metaphysics. Now, we don't leave religion when we move to metaphysics. Everybody, please understand that we don't leave our religious views when we discover our metaphysical views. And we don't leave our metaphysical views when we rediscover religion. And it awaits our rediscovery. Now, quantum mechanics began to back into God. Of course, it didn't call it God. Heavens were it. We call it God. It called it, I've forgotten all these words. Forgotten them. Well, there's a principle of everything. There's a TOE, theory of everything. There is, I forgot them all. So, thank you. Implicate order. Thank you. That's what I love about this one. I've forgotten everything. And I don't have to worry about it. Yeah. I used to have to remember names and give credit. Everybody understands that that goes away. And that isn't where it's at anyway. Well, this is what physics has begun to find out with quantum mechanics. With quantum mechanics, physicists now who've never been inside a church and wouldn't deign anything metaphysical acceptable, especially Western metaphysics, have begun to see that everything that we see with our EYE is holographic in nature. That is, right now you see a holographic bill up here in front of the room. You'll look down and see holographic hands and holographic feet. You feel a holographic forehead, which means to a good physicist, well then, there must be something beyond this hologram. Something is being this tree, this room, this air that I breathe, these photons that I am looking at in my linear accelerator. Now, the secrets that there are secrets. Let me go on record. There are secrets. And we are not to profane the secrets. We were told by those who really knew what they were talking about. One of them was a Galilean who ricocheted up and down the hills of Galilee. I have a high regard for him. He was called a master. Another one was Lao Tzu, who wrote a book called the Debilitating. Those masters all told us that we should be cautious with our secrets, because otherwise they would be profane. They also, those same people said, but there comes a time when that which is hidden will be revealed, and that which is covered will be uncovered. I don't know how you feel about it, but I feel that that time has come. And this is that time. If you were a politician, you would find out that time has come. You can't get by with anything. If you were trying to hide a secret, you can't hide it anymore. The time has come when everything is moving at the speed of light, even information. Soon we will have television sets with 500 channels, like we need them. But what we are really seeing is information carried to light. That is, quantum information. The only way we can see it tangibly would be to get 500 or 1,000 or 2,000 channels of information. Some of it right, some of it terribly wrong, most of it in between. And awareness is perceiving itself continually. So now we have, for the third time, I think, the secrets being discovered. First, it was forest dwellers, forest wanderers, many, many years, as linear time goes, ago. We just a blink ago. But they didn't have the analogies to make it plain. They didn't have the illustrations to make the point. So, in their frustration, but in their happiness, they climbed the mountains. They tried to get away from people. They said, "This is more than I can stand." And soon their ideas became organized into churches. Little group of men, usually wearing black robes, ran around saying, "I have the truth, and there is no truth except through me." And they interposed themselves as intermediaries between God, presence, which is right here. Presence is here, right now. And awareness is here. We had all these intermediaries, rabbis here, and priests there, and holy men somewhere else. Occasionally a holy woman. A lot of holy women until the Jews threw them all out. And still a lot of holy women in China, in India. So please don't any of you take offense at anything I say now. It's hard to say anything. But science has backed in. Oh, that was the first time the forest dweller. The second time, we can say 500 BC came the second birth of discovery, Lao Tzu. Through 2,000 years ago, John the Baptist, Jesus, the Essenes, I think. Again, all of the analogies, illustrations couldn't be made because we didn't have them yet. Now, 2,000 years later, science, of all people, scientists are backing into the present. Now, sometime shortly, before you guys and gals edit this tape, science will have to make a choice that will require an awful lot of swallowing pride. Science is going to have to admit that there is indeed a present. Right here, right now, taking care of this awareness, tending this awareness. or there isn't. Now, science will make that choice, it looks like to me. That's why I wanted Dr. Bohm to be here, and maybe even Hawking's. Yeah. These people are very close to admitting that there is a present. There must be. It isn't an accident. Okay, why then does this presence make itself so hard to see? And why is this presence, it appears just as evil as it is good? Since we are all aboard the train, will everybody repeat after me the word entrainment? Entrainment. Thank you. What is the... I want to say that science, this new God that we put a white coat on and call doctor, doesn't really know what entrainment is. Why pendulums begin to swing together. Why a group of people can get together and think about the same thing at the same time, and something synergistic happens. Science is discovering God. In the next few years, science will either say, yes, there is something being this awareness. Something is being this awareness. Or they will deny it. If that should be the case, it will be the third denial. Because this truth has been, while it has always been here, closer than breathing, closer than fingers and toes, it is denied. For one reason or another, because somebody wants to make a living with it, or because somebody wants to have a healing because of it, or because somebody wants to make a human life, a human experience happy with it. For one reason or another, it is shunted aside, made into a system of one kind or another, and the original idea is lost sight of. At one time, Buddha said, we have a great secret here. What shall we do with it? And some of his disciples said, let's just take this secret and we'll hide it in the deepest part of the ocean. And that was before the Mariana Trench had been discovered and science hadn't found it yet. And Buddha said, no, it will be found there. And somebody else said, let's take this simple truth and let's take it and we will stick it out there in the Pleiades. The Pleiades, that little grouping of stars that if you look straight up at night, you will see. And Buddha said, no, if we hide it there, it'll be found and profaned. And so the disciple said to Lord Buddha, what should we do with it? And his reply, I know that everyone in here has heard it before, but I would like to say it again. We will hide it in simplicity, clothe it with simplicity, and we will hide it in the child heart of us. And there, no one will stop to look for it. So, I want to talk, I want to begin at the beginning, which is awareness. Let's try it again. We begin at the beginning, which is awareness. You awakened this morning. What did you do? You looked around the room. Awareness was aware. We didn't like necessarily where it said we were or what it said we were going to do, but we began with awareness. So awareness is here, right now. It's fully here. It always has been here. It will always be here. It's with us wherever we go. Closer than breathing, closer than the fingers and toes. Awareness is awareing. So, we have gotten aboard the train, entrainment. Our pendulums are swinging together, and if you are not accustomed, if you don't have something that you consider a pendulum, use some other part of the anatomy, but we are together, entrainment, our pendulum swinging together, and awareness is fully here. Now, none of us have ever been outside this awareness that we're wearing right here, right now. You've never been out there to say, hey, there's a tree out there. There is Bill out there, a measurable distance apart from me here. We have grown up in a space-time continuum believing that awareness was to report something to us. To us. Well, who is this big I that says us? Who is this us to whom awareness reports? Now, the masters through the years have discovered that they've always been awareness. This awareness. This is the only one I know anything about. And they have realized that dominion resided with awareness. Not out there with the husband or the wife or the light or the anything else that appeared to be threatening awareness here. How many here believe in miracles? Thank you. I wish that all of you would raise your hand, because miracles happen. And I am going to talk about that, mostly because I never have before. I've been afraid to. But miracles happen. And I don't mean just little bitty ones. I mean great big ones. I asked all of you to put down, if you could have if you could have anything you want in this world, would you please write it on a piece of paper, and I would look at it. And all of you did. There were lots of comedians, which I'm grateful for. But by and large, everybody asked for the same thing. And I want to tell you, with all the power that I can muster, and with all the seriousness that I can muster, that miracles happen Now, it was really cool as a little kid to grow up and say that miracles were a lot of superstitious follow-all, and that all a miracle ever seemed to be was something not yet explained or understood by science. But that science, when science understood something, it would no longer be a miracle. It would just be science operating. For instance, there are cameras taking pictures here. What excites the film inside the camera is a little electron. Do you know that our prestigious men in white coats can't tell us what a photon is, which is an electron, photon. We can do all kinds of things with photons. I'm using the right word, photon. We can do all kinds of things with them. We can measure them. We can tell you how fast they're moving. We can measure distances between them. We can squeeze the electron down into a little device that is only one electron wide, one photon wide. And it only lets out one photon at a time. And yet we don't know, we still don't know what a photon is. If all of you people were scientists, and the question were asked, tell me what is a photon, there would be as many answers to that question as if I were to ask you, what is God? Or what is truth? Or what is love? What is life? In fact, you would come much closer to answering the question, what is life, than you could answering what is a photon. Well, did you know that everything in this world that comes to us via the photon? Did you know that everything we know or think we know, everything that we articulate or try to, or wear, or hope to wear, or to be, or hope to be, comes to us by the way of the photon? And did you know that when you lie down at night on the ground and you look up at the night sky, that some of those photons have been traveling for 15 billion years? Did you know that science still, despite its vast accumulation of wisdom in so many areas, still can't tell us what a photon is and why it is that photon has traveled for 15 billion years and nothing has changed or nothing has happened to the photon until such time as it strikes the retina of your eye. Your eye, not mine, yours. Did you know that the perspective from which you watch a photon determines what you see? Science is making all of these discoveries, and yet metaphysics in religion have been telling us this for thousands of years. But science now is backing into it. Did you know that if this were a linear accelerator, a cloud chamber right here, and we are watching what is soon to transpire, the ultimate cloud chamber is going to be made out in Texas. But anyway, if this were a linear accelerator, where you sit looking at it determines on what we see in it. It is possible for me right here to look in the cloud chamber, and you right there look in the cloud chamber, and I see silver and you see gold. I am, of course, being too little. But science has discovered that the awareness of the perceiver alters what is perceived. Science, the last place on earth you would expect to hear anything metaphysical coming from. Now, that much said, I was lying down on the couch and I was listening to Harry Belafonte. Mr. Harry Belafonte, whom I love very much because he sings so clearly, I can understand him. And with his permission and the permission of those who wrote the song, I would like to read the last thing I wrote when I could still write. These are the songs of that, these are the words of that song. I peeped in to say goodnight, and I heard my child in prayer. I peeped in to say goodnight, and I heard my child in prayer. The little girl is kneeling down beside the bed, and she's saying her night's prayer. But it was ending, was coming to an end, and so he only heard, he peeped in the room, and all he heard the little girl say, and for me, some scarlet ribbons for my hair. All the stores were closed and shuttered, and all the streets were dark and bare. In our whole town, no scarlet ribbons, not one ribbon for her hair. When we were children, we asked for all kinds of things. I asked for a bicycle. When my dad and mother could no more afford a bicycle than they could rise and fall. And yet when I went downstairs on Christmas morning, there was a bicycle there. Through the night, my heart was aching. This man steps in, he hears this little girl, and the last thing she said was, and for me some scarlet ribbons. Scarlet ribbons for my hair. And he couldn't find the scarlet ribbon anywhere. And the stores were closed, and the town was all shuttered up. And his heart was aching. All through the night, his heart was aching because there wasn't a single scarlet ribbon to go in and give to that little girl. Just before the dawn was breaking, I peeped in. And on her bed, in gay profusion lying there. Lovely ribbons, scarlet ribbons for her hair. If I live to be 100, I will never know from where came those lovely scarlet ribbons. Scarlet ribbons for her hair. I'm here to tell you where they came from and why and how, so that you can do it too. It's possible. It's possible. If I live to be 100, I will never know from where those scarlet ribbons came from. They were laying there in gay profusion. I tell you, we can ask for anything. 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 Believing. We can say to the mountain, be hurled into the ocean, and it will be hurled into the ocean. The key word there is believing. How do we believe? How do we believe like that? I would like to have whatever I can ask for. Now, let's take that Galilean, the man that was the last master that is written about. For 3 years he had been trying to tell his disciples about becoming childlike, about becoming as children again, about being childlike, not childish, childlike. For 3 years he had gone over and over the same statement. Suffer the little children to come unto me, for such is the kingdom of heaven. I tell you that lest ye become like children, you can in no wise enter the kingdom of heaven. Then, just before the tail end of that beautiful ministry, these men, 12 of them, had heard this so many times that finally in desperation they came and they said, tell us, what do you mean? And I will paraphrase again liberally because I can't remember it exactly anymore. But one of the disciples thought, you've told us this so many times, for Christ's sake, what do you mean? What do you mean? Must I re-enter my mother's womb? Is that what you're talking about? And he must have done like so many of us. I can't make it clear. There aren't words for it. There are no analogies or illustrations. But you remember that at the tail end, these same men were walking along with him, and he is on his way, I guess, to Jerusalem, and he passes a fig tree, and there's no fruit on the fig tree, and the disciples are astounded because the fig tree withered. And Jesus said, you think this is big stuff? You think this is a miracle? I tell you that anything you ask, believe it. Yeah. And then shortly, the very same man that had made that great remark is askew with a sword or a nail in both hands and in both feet, a hole in his side, And he's saying, Father, why hast thou forsaken me? So, you see, to answer the query about suffering, I don't think we ever stop our suffering. Until we know what its purpose is. The lady that bent down and said, does you know what love is? And I said, no, I don't. She said, you doesn't have to. Well, I don't know what God, the present, isness, the big circle, isness. I don't know what isness is. But I know it is. I know it is. And that's as far as we have to get. Churches, to the contrary, believe in the Bible, to the contrary, believe in ministers and priests and rabbis and metaphysicians who rant and rave, to the contrary. All we have to do is believe that God is. That God is. Now, does anybody question that arithmetic is? We can't see it, but we know that if we start doing our multiplication tables, arithmetic makes itself apparent. We know if we start writing that the alphabet makes itself apparent. Alphabet is here. Arithmetic is here. How about music? Nobody is playing the Fifth Symphony right at this moment. But it is in our hearts. It is. We know that music is. We know it is present. Now, what is the one thing about which none of us quarrel? We know that awareness is. It was my happy privilege for a number of years to be on the pathway of all the atheists that would travel between Arizona and Florida. They would go to Florida in the wintertime where it was nice and warm, and then would spend the summer in Arizona, headquarters for atheists at that time. And they would all stop by the little bakery I had to argue with me about the existence of God. But as soon as we could define terms and decide what we mean when we say God, truth, isn't, life, truth, as soon as we define terms, there wasn't any argument. From all these wonderful people who consider themselves atheists, they would always leave and say, well, I'm not as much an atheist as I thought, so now at least you have made me an agnostic. The one thing that we can be certain of is here is awareness. Awareness seems at this moment to be awareing. It's watching Bill wipe off his forehead, or it is feeling the press of a chair underneath the butt, or shoes are too tight or something, but awareness is wearing. Now, what do we have to do in this human linear experience? And not only do people like me talk about it, but scientists are beginning to talk about it. Thank you, scientists, because we've been saying for so many years that there is something being this awareness to whom we report, to whom awareness reports. Now, we've been saying it reports to a me, my body named George. Awareness reports to my mind. Awareness is the activity of my mind. Never was awareness the activity of my mind, but we believed that so for a time, and during the time we believed it so, it was true. We have said from the time we first heard Santa Claus wasn't real, well, I can be fooled. I can be duped. Who is this I who can be fooled, who can be duped? Who is this me who says my awareness? That me who says my awareness is already dead. It doesn't exist. It never did. But was perfectly all right for us to believe it did, because we were supposed to. How would we know that life isn't in matter? If for a very, very long period of our lives, it was important to us that we believed that life was in matter and could go out of matter. And so, for a long period of our lives, we believed that awareness was reporting to my mind, my me. You all remember that there was a very lovely lady once who said, she got angry. She got angry because she kept floating away, and people had to pull her back down. Her name was Catherine of Siena. She made the remark, my me is God, nor do I recognize any other me but my God himself. Okay, let's come back down to basics. We all walked in here, awareness was awareing. Awareness walked in here. Awareness has the ability to look at the tree up close. And awareness can walk away and look at the tree from a distance. Awareness appears at this moment to include a point in time and space. I am here, and I see Rachel over there. I turn